after nearly losing my voice playing Power Wash Simulator, of all things. Oh, we're back with a bit of a swerve out of my usual wheelhouse talking about TikTok. God help me. I don't really want to talk about TikTok because I consider TikTok to be a curse upon humanity, an ADHD-riddled platform that should never have been allowed in the first place, particularly considering its deep ties to the Chinese government. And it appears as if the rest of humanity is slowly arriving at the Archian position, as a bill to ban TikTok has passed through the House in America, and with a pretty damn crushing margin as well, something like 360 to 50 or 60 odd, I think. It was very, very, very one-sided, though of course whether or not it'll pass through the Senate is a different question entirely, though Biden has said that if it does so, he is willing to sign it into law. This despite, of course, him having actually opened a TikTok account, but to be fair, that can probably be explained more easily by the fact that Biden is a very old man who struggles with the younger demographic, and his campaign probably thought this was a way to reach them, I'd guess. And this also opens up the caveat of allowing TikTok to remain active, but it must divest itself from China. So, real quick here, why is this whole China connection important? Well, here's the thing. China has a fair few laws and regulations about companies operating within China, giving the government a great deal of influence over them, shall we say, and a great deal of insight into them. Furthermore, any company that wants to do any sort of business in China must do so via a Chinese company. So if you want to sell slippers, for example, you must contract a Chinese company to sell the slippers, or even in some cases, even you must contract a company to make the slippers and then sell them in China for you. You can't simply just move in China and start selling stuff. This is a very intelligent rule for the Chinese government, of course, because they are actively moving into other people's countries and selling stuff there. And they realize this gives them a tremendous amount of potential power over the local economy. Something they don't wish to be used against them. The West has been far too permissive of China, but that is a different topic entirely. So, the TikTok ban. There were some concerns raised over free speech concerns, and for once I find myself on the opposite side of this particular issue, as whilst free speech is pretty important, and a right and a privilege that is under attack in the West, TikTok is a greater danger to free speech than even YouTube is. Because we're already talking on a bit of a censored social media platform now, but it really is nothing in comparison to China. You know, we gripe and moan about how YouTube doesn't want us to say certain words, or suppress us, or put us on lists, etc. And this sucks. But compared to, I don't know, Tibet, Hong Kong, the Uyghur population, yeah, there's a difference in scale here, shall we say. So, the TikTok ban, I believe, is a correct move, both from a strategic directive, as in TikTok is obviously a tool of the opposition to the West in this case, and let me just point out as well, a conflict with China is practically inevitable. Alright, that's not fear-mongering, that is history. Whenever a dominant power, in this case America, sees a competitor rising up quickly from behind it, that being China, a conflict almost always universally is created between the two. Now that doesn't necessarily mean outright war, mind you, it could simply be an economic contest. But there is almost no way in hell that nothing is going to happen. In fact, there was an interesting description dating back to the Franco-Prussian War describing France, one of the leading powers at the time, which said that France found itself in that foulest of moods, of a great power feeling itself about to slip to second-rank status. And that describes tremendously well both America and China right now, as both are dealing with their own fair share of problems. And just on a broader spectrum as well here, okay? Banning TikTok is a good thing because TikTok is awful. And I even believe that the transferring ownership is not good enough. Because, seriously, we in the current world have a problem with lack of information, all right? We have a problem with the ability to fully absorb information, to get all of the context we require to make informed decisions. We are getting dumber. Like, the competency crisis is very, 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 very real. And feeding people 1 minute long snippets on literally everything from news to technology to world events to politics to philosophy, right alongside big-booted women shaking their asses at you, is just about the worst possible thing we could do. Again, this is ADHD-riddled trash of the highest degree that will serve very little purpose beyond dumbing down the populace and shrinking their already incredibly low attention span yet further. Already, we're at the point where it's entirely common to see somebody on an iPad in front of the television with a computer on the other screen, like doing 3 things at once because they can't handle a nanosecond of base solitude or lack of stimulus. That is the kind of thing that TikTok feeds into, the constant scrolling thing. This is not good for humans, okay? This is, in fact, terrible for humans. Not to mention the political ramifications of this becoming a news, a media, and a politics source. You can't really gather any worthwhile knowledge from a 1-minute video clip. Hell, on anything of actual substance, like the political situation of a nation or philosophy, 10, 20, 30 minutes is often not good enough. I mean, we've criticized the news that runs for like half an hour to an hour of not being able to provide enough in-depth information to allow the viewer to actually build a coherent and correct view of what's going on. And now we've got 1-minute-long hot takes being produced by the thousands, where the algorithm encourages you to spam it out as quickly as possible, with as little context as possible, and with as little reference material as possible, in coordination with about 20,000 other people doing the exact same thing. Yeah, as far as our mental health is concerned, this might just be about the worst thing ever for humanity. And of course, you can certainly argue the freedom of choosing, right? That people have a right to seek out the entertainment that benefits them and that they find enjoyable. Absolutely. And we might even be able to reach some sort of compromise. I don't think you should be allowed to do news or cover current events on TikTok because you are unable to provide the sort of, well, not even just context, but depth of matter that you really need on these things. I mean, hell, even a 10-minute video explaining why I think TikTok is cancer is completely unable to really reach into the depths of this, because we have studies on seeing the shortening attention span on humanity. We have studies showing that if you keep consuming very, very short content like this, your brain is actually going to start not sucking up the information as easily. It all becomes just a blur that slides off your smooth brain. Literally the meme. But I think it is demonstrably obvious, frankly, from the current collections of young people, the current generation, etc., and the ongoing competency crisis, which, incidentally, if you want to dive deeper into that, my friend Surefire Taku, Dev, did a wonderful video on that just recently, and it's not a minute long. Weirdly enough. TikTok is just simply not good for us. Not on a personal level, not on a species level, and certainly not in a, I wonder if the West will be able to not fall to the Chinese communist dictatorship level. We don't need it. And if we absolutely require a substitute, because bearing in mind there is way too much power centralized in far too few platforms in the West, then, well, I want something with a little bit more rights and protections. Ideally speaking, I would rather see us have the actual, guarantee over our rights and privileges be created. Because there is, of course, another point here as well, and that is that the TikTok content creators, excuse me, they do have an argument in that this will ruin their lifestyles and their jobs, etc. And I am sympathetic, to a degree, again. But what we'd really need in that case is more of a, well, not a Bill of Rights necessarily, but a guarantee for one's ability to continue to making content on social media platforms, right? So there really should have been some form more of a unified alternative to this. Something, see, I've been thinking more and more about the idea of this, and it's a very difficult one to come up with, because on the one hand, I'm leaning towards the idea of a centralized, universal government-run platform, right, where everyone has the same rights to do anything they want on it within legal limits. But anything government-run is undoubtedly going to fall more and more into government abuse, obviously. Simultaneously, independent platforms tend to, well, do the exact same thing by essentially legislating via terms of service, like YouTube and Twitter and Facebook and everything else. And so long as there isn't an overhanging entity going, no, you can't do that, well, the company is simply going to abuse its power to the maximum extent of what the corporate market is willing to bear. In other words, it'll keep pushing its authoritarian nature until it literally breaks the users. That seems very clearly demonstrable. So the perfect solution is probably somewhere in between, even if I haven't quite figured out what that solution is just yet. Anyways, we are wandering somewhat off the topic of TikTok, aren't we? Personally, I hope it passes. I don't want to see TikTok in the West, but feel free to disagree, and in fact, I'd like to hear your comments on it in the comment section down below, particularly on the free speech argument, because I see its merit on simply just a, well, principled position, right? But one must also bear in mind that this is literally an arm of the Chinese government, and its free speech potential will last only so long as it is strategically useful to aforementioned government. I suppose that kind of also damages my previous idea of a governmental platform, doesn't it? At least to some degree, but whilst America might not be perfect, and is a hell of a lot worse over here in Europe as well when it comes to shitty governments, it's still better than China. Till next time, I've been Arch. Thank you very much for watching, and I do hope to see you all again soon. Have a good day.